Hey all, this is Hannah, and I am here speaking with Brian Jackson, who just came back from Anglers Inn. I'm sure he's crying because nobody likes leaving there once they get there. This was his first time there. And Brian, where are you from?
Well, I am from Austin, Texas, and then my friend that went with me, he's a Texas guy, but he actually has lived in Missoula, Montana for over the last 30 years. And so he came from Montana, and I came from Austin, Texas, and we met in Dallas and then flew down to Mazatlan, and then we fished both Lake Picachos and Lake El Salto with Anglers Inn. And yes, we are still going through withdrawals, absolutely, because it was a fantastic time.
That's awesome. And how did you hear about Anglers Inn to begin with?
I've always wanted to fish in Mexico. I used to bass fish a lot. I used to fish a lot of tournaments and things of that nature, but kids and life and work all got in the way, and so I haven't fished much in the last 15 years. I decided I wanted to get back into bass fishing, and I might as well start and take my dream trip to Mexico. In researching about going to Mexico on various fishing forums and the internet and things of that nature, half past first cast kept coming up as a possible resource. And I got on the website. There's this amazing page on the website with just article after article after article talking about bass fishing in Mexico. Everything from traveling down there, lures, rods, what to expect, food, safety, everything. It was just such a great resource. And on that page, it says, hey, we book trips to Mexico. It doesn't cost you any additional funds. It's the same price as if you book directly with Anglers Inn. And so I thought, okay, well, this has been a great resource, and I want to just continue on with them. And that's when I contacted Half Past First Cast, and they put me in touch with, Anglers Inn and booked the trip for me.
Yep. I love it. I love it. So we've done our job. We've done our job.
Your job really exceeded expectations. I will say that. Because if you book directly with Anglers Inn, I'm sure that's great. But I was able to email Pete the week before I went down there. Hey, what's the fishing looking like? He was texting the guides down there, giving feedback to me on what was working, what wasn't working. I was able to have a really honest exchange with you guys about tipping. I was a little uncomfortable about that, because you don't want to shortchange anyone. At the same time, it costs some money to go down there, and it was just great. Even though Anglers Inn sends a little guide on that, which is very appreciative. It's just nice to be able to say, this is what we do, this is why we do it, this is how much, this is the way we think it can work. And so it's just not the fishing. There's even an article on the website about when you land, what it will be like getting through the airport. That was so helpful. I used my priority pass to access the club at the airport in Mazatlan. Wouldn't have known about that if it wouldn't have been for one of the articles that you guys had posted. So everything from airport navigation, the club in the airport, transportation to and from, how to tip, what lures to use. Pete and I exchanged a bunch of emails on whether I should take my own rods or not. He's got a great article on that, what size rods and if you take them and how it works. And so I would just tell everybody that, yes, booking directly, I'm sure you'll have a great trip. But I got tons of additional information on lots of different aspects of the trip that you don't even think about when you're thinking about fishing in Mexico. That was extremely helpful.
Oh, good. I got a smile on my face. So we've done our job. That's what that's what we set out to do, because so many people, you said it took you a long time to get, to go and fish in Mexico, bass fishing. And you possibly went because of the research. You probably said yes because of the research we put out there for you. Right. So
exactly.
Yes, we have people who left the country for the first time and went to Panama with us. They've never left the country, and we said, well, why this trip? And they said, you told us exactly how to get the passport, where to go, about how long it's going to take to get it. Then we took them through the exact trip, and they didn't know us from the Man in the Moon. And they gave me their entire deposit right up front. They paid the whole balance. And here they came. And now they are one of our best friends. And they go on all of our trips together because we tell them, they're like, just tell us the dates and where we need to fly into.
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
But that's what we want people to do.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me because it's just great information. There's no way you can get better information. I know about Mexico. You can't, because I had looked and looked and looked. There's no better resources out there, in all of the articles that are posted, on all of the different subjects we've talked about. And you're just honest, genuine people. Responded to every one of my emails, answered all of my questions. Even when I said, well, it's a week before I go, I'm trying to narrow my tackle selections down because my tackle box, my bag can only weigh 50 pounds. I'm taking so much stuff. And Pete's like, okay, I heard from this guide, but I also texted another guide, and I'm waiting to hear from him, and I'll let you know. So not just updates on what lures were being used, but updates on the process he was going through to talk to the various different guides he was talking to. So it really is. It is great customer service and a great resource. And I probably wouldn't have gone without Half-Past First Cast, but I certainly wouldn't have had as enjoyable a trip.
Oh, well, thank you so much. All right, let's talk about the actual fishing. I'm assuming you caught some fish at both places. I mean, if you didn't, that means you didn't pick up your rod. All right, so you decided not to bring your fishing rods, is that correct?
No, I did. I decided to bring them. I really talked about it or emailed, with Pete about it, and he said, the rods down there are good. He gave me some good advice about which ones to select and inspect them before you get them and that type of thing. But at the same time, if you really consider yourself kind of more of a high-level fisherman, you'll wish you had your own rods. Whether I'm actually a good fisherman or not is certainly up for debate. But I think I'm a good fisherman. And so I wanted to have my own rods there. So I took them. I had a rod trap, case that I'd had for over 20 years and packed them exactly like Pete explained.
Yep.
You get a bed sheet, you roll them up individually, you put a butt of the rod past the tip on each end, all of those things. Be prepared. I'm so glad. I wouldn't have thought about this. Pete said, hey, print out a copy of the airline's baggage policy and take it with you because you won't be surprised if some people question you. Sure enough, that exact same thing. Walked into DFW, American Airlines in Dallas. You would think they'd seen everything. And the lady was immediately like, oh, that's too long. That's too big. I had a copy of the policy there. I was like, oh, we kind of laughed. It was very nice. Oh, fortunately for me, this case is 99 inches long, and your baggage policy is up to 108 inches, and it certainly doesn't weigh 50 pounds. I'm lucky that it's going to just squeeze in there. And sure enough, she kind of looked at it and read it. Okay, go put it over there.
Yeah.
So it's just stuff like that I wouldn't have known. And like I said, Anglers Inn is wonderful. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about them. They're fantastic. But they don't think about that type of thing on the trip. They're not giving you information on that type of thing that made things go so smoothly for me.
Right, because we were on your end at one point.
Exactly. Now I will say, Pete said he said in one of his articles, the longest rod I take, I think he's 7'3" I took a 7'6" and really regretted that because I had to extend my case by an additional 6 inches to fit that one, and that caused some of the problems. Next time when I go back, the longest I'll take is 7'3". My buddy from Montana, he has no bass fishing equipment anymore, so I took all of the equipment for both of us. So I took 8 reels and 8 rods, and I will definitely next time, because of the way my rod case is made, the longest rod I'll take will be 7'3" because that extra 6 inches, did cause me a little bit of grief. But it all worked out because I had printed that baggage policy just like you guys had suggested, and I had it with me when she asked me about it. And I could very nicely, I always try to do everything very nicely. You don't want to get in a spat with anyone because you'll lose in the long run. But fortunately, she looked at it, and I was kind of laughing and talking about it, and it worked out great.
That's awesome. Yes, and smart. You're smart. You paid attention.
I did. And then as a result, we caught fish. And you asked me about the fishing.
Yes.
We booked a 5-day trip. And what it was going to be is 2.5 days at Picachos and 2.5 days at El Salto. And the way that the itinerary worked we flew in on a Sunday. We were to go to Picachos first because I hadn't fished in 15 years. I just kind of wanted to get the hang of it again before I went to El Salto because I understood that Picachos was more of a numbers lake. But we weren't supposed to fish Sunday afternoon at Picachos because we were just in transport from Mazatlan. But we arrived around 3 o'clock, and so they offered us for $100 each. We could do an afternoon session from 3 to 6, and we jumped on it. So we ultimately fished a total of 3 days at Picachos, even though we booked 2.5, since we added that extra half day. And then after our last half day at Picachos, then we traveled on to El Salto and fished 2.5 days there.
So after you got up that morning, had breakfast, and then they took you from Picachos to El Salto.
Well, they did it a little different. It was surprising, Hannah, because I thought it would work like that, but they didn't. They had us fish. So one of our designated half days was on Wednesday morning at Picachos. And they said, get off the water a little early because that van is going to leave at 11 a.m. So instead of fishing until 11, we fished until about 10 or so. So we had a shortened day, a little bit on that Wednesday, but it was fine. I mean, we actually had one of our best mornings that morning. It was the perfect ending. But we got back by 11. They were ready for us. They had fixed sandwiches for us. So we had BLTs, and they put them in bags for us, and they had plenty of drinks for us, and we jumped in the van, and it was about an hour and 50-minute drive into El Salto. We ate while we drove, and my buddy took a nap, and we unloaded at 1 o'clock on El Salto, and at 2 o'clock we were on the water there. So that was a long, hard day, but we actually did a half day in the morning at Picachos and a half day in the afternoon at El Salto on the same day.
Oh, good. Okay. So maybe they've changed it, but at least you got it's so great. I mean, you're fishing at half morning, and then when you get to the next place, at least they got you out in the water, which is great.
Yeah, we had a great afternoon too. That was probably our best total day because we caught. So on Picachos, our guide, his name was Oscar, and Oscar had a fish counter, like a pitch counter. And it's funny, I started to take one down there. But my sons are both in college now. They were both baseball players, so I've got a million pitch counters. My middle one pitched, but that's what he actually used to count our fish. And that was nice because it was very exact as to what we caught on Picachos. And sometimes when they get up close to the boat and they flop off, he'd ask, counting? He'd ask, should we count him or not? Because if it was a 2.5-pound fish at that point, I'm hoping he jumps off at the boat. I'm letting him flap around a little bit there at the edge of the boat before we deal with him. And so, or if he got off further away, I'd say, no, don't count him. But if he was at the boat and I was hoping he would, jump off before I had to reach down there and grab him, then he'd count him. So he was counting those. And that first Sunday afternoon, when we added that extra session, I think we caught 36 that Sunday afternoon. Then on Monday, we fished all day at Picachos, and we caught 112. And it was really good fishing. The biggest was about 4 pounds. Most of them were 2 to 3.5 pounds. And then the next full day on Picachos, we caught 85. But the size seemed to be bigger. We caught a lot of fish between 3 and 4.5 pounds that next day. And then the last morning, which was our half day before we went to El Salto, we caught 44 in that shortened 6:30 to 10 a.m. window, and I caught the biggest fish of the trip, and it was a 7.5 pounder.
Very nice. Very nice.
It's just a great way to end it. It really was. And one of the other things that we did for the listeners is that I bought a little nicer digital scale and took it with me. So all of these weights are, exact weights. Fishermen are fishermen. and sometimes when you're talking fishing, I always say, the first liar never has a chance when you're fishing, whatever the story is. And so some people might come back and say, oh, we didn't have a scale, but we caught 3 8-pounders. And you're thinking, I caught a 6.5 pounder that I thought went 8.5, but when you put him on the scale, he was only 6.5. You just never know. But all of our weights were exact. We had a digital scale, and I'm glad I did. And that 7.5 pounder looked a whole lot bigger than that, but he was a great fish. And then that same day, fishing the half day at Picachos, we jump in the van, we drive to El Salto, we jump on the water there. Toledo was our guide on El Salto, and then we're fishing kind of more offshore, deep structure stuff with 10-inch plastic worms. I only caught 12 bass myself. Personally, I caught 12 bass that afternoon in Salto, but 7 of them were over 5 pounds, and that was all on the scale. I mean, they just were really quality fish. I have fished Lake Fork 30 or 40 times in my life, and Sam Rayburn, and all of the lakes, and I can't remember catching 12 fish over 5 pounds on a 4-hour session. I mean, it was really great quality that afternoon. So that was our favorite day, Wednesday. 7.5 pounder at Picachos, and then I personally caught 12 over 5 at El Salto.
It's crazy, and they're strong fish. I mean, you feel like you've got like a shark on or a big old tuna. I mean, you don't know what's coming up.
I've got some pictures that I need to post, but I mean, some of the fish. You always talk about bass looking like footballs. Some of them, genuinely, they look like footballs. I mean, it's the perfect description of them. That 7.5 pounder at Picachos was spawned out. It was a super long fish, and it was much, much thinner. I caught some 6.5 pounders on El Salto that, I mean, you think they're only 22 inches, 23 inches, but they just are as their girth is as much as their length. They really are. And fight, goodness gracious, pull like a freight train. They really do fight down there. I guess they're just so strong from eating all those tilapia. But
or something, because every time I'll do a nice hook set, and the guy will go, big. I said, I don't know at this point. I could have a 2-pounder because I could have gotten stuck on a stick, and then, oh boy. Or
I got embarrassed saying, it's a big one, and it'd be a 3.5 pounder, which is a great fish. I mean, I can't believe that I was rolling my eyes at 3.5 pounders, but those 3.5 pounders pull like 6.5 pounders.
Yes, they do. Exactly. You're exactly right. All right. So, what was there a difference in the lures that you used at either lake?
Absolutely. And that was very interesting, and that was probably fun for me as I'm kind of getting back into bass fishing, to get a wide variety of fishing. And if I had just gone to El Salto, I wouldn't have gotten that. When we were at El Salto, our guide, knew the contour of the lake. It's just amazing. He's in his 40s. He's been on that lake since he was 14. His dad was a guide on that lake before him, and he'll sit there and tell you this point runs this way, and there's a little hump on the end of it. There's 3 trees back here, and he just, he knows it like the back of his hand. And he was very, very comfortable. He wanted to be offshore, out in about 18 foot of water or so, and we just were dragging 10-inch plastic worms around most of the time. Whereas on Picachos, we really did do more of a post-spawn pattern. We were kind of halfway back in some creeks, fishing secondary points where those fish had spawned and they were moving out. We did find some shad on some main lake points, but they were up shallow. And so on Picachos, we caught a lot of fish on chatterbaits. White chatterbaits, were really great lures. We caught a lot of really good, tons of 4-pound bass on three-quarter ounce rattle traps, which surprised us. I didn't even hardly pack any rattle traps because I thought, I don't ever throw a rattle trap. And sure enough, I only had 2 gold 3/4 ounce rattle traps, and my buddy Paul lost his on about the 6th or 7th fish, and then he was out of luck because I kept the other one the rest of the time. But that was a great lure. We caught a lot on Cinco at Picachos. We never even threw a Cinco at El Salto. I took hundreds of them and thought that's what we throw, but we didn't throw them there. And then a square bill crankbait was really good on Picachos. We caught a lot of fish. I caught twice. I caught 2 bass at one time on one crankbait, on the square bill crankbait on Picachos. I did the last morning on El Salto. I asked our guide, I said, hey, 4 straight sessions, we've been hitting these deep water areas. He calls them all points. Some of them are ledges, some of them are river ledges. But I said, let's throw a topwater this morning. It was just glass. There wasn't a breath of wind. And I tied on a Sammy, which is like a Zara spook type bait that I've always enjoyed throwing. I've had these Sammys for over 20 years. And I tied one on. He didn't really like that. He wanted me to throw the big Rico, chugger popper type bait, but I wanted to throw my Sammy. And on the second cast, I caught a 6-pound, 10-ounce bass. And on the fifth cast, I caught a 6-pound, 14-ounce bass. On those Sammys, Zara spook type baits in the mornings, within 4 casts, catch 2 fish pushing 7 pounds each. It was just, really exciting morning. Other than that, we primarily threw plastic worms, 10-inch plastic worms on El Salto.
Yeah, so we always tell our guests, listen to your guide. But once you're also down there, it's your trip. And it's sometimes you don't get to throw certain things at home that you might want to try down there. And that's the place to try. There's so much water, there's so much time, and it's vacation.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm glad that you tried something that you wanted to do, even though the guide said, hey, for the most part, we listen to the guide. Every once in a while, we'll pull something out, and our guide will be like, what is that?
Exactly. Exactly. We threw, he wanted to throw, I should mention, we threw an A-rig some. When we were down there, all of the fishermen at the lodge, there were a lot of big fish caught on an Alabama rig. Lots of people were catching big fish on an A-rig, and so he wanted us to throw an A-rig. First, I will tell you, I thought that was torture. I mean, my goodness, it's like casting a cantaloupe, to throw the A-rig. I'd never thrown one before. But everybody says you got to throw it. You don't catch many, but when you catch one, it's a big one. We fished an A-rig the first morning. That's what we threw the whole time. And we caught 5 bass on the A-rig, and the biggest one was 3.5 pounds. He was shaking his head. He's like, I can't believe this. How in the world are we catching? We caught 5 fish, and the biggest one was 3.5 pounds, and everybody else in the lodge was there. A lot of fish, 8 pounds plus, were caught on A-rigs while we were there. That's why the second morning, he had kind of talked about the A-rig, and I was like, I don't even like throwing that thing. And I said, can we throw a topwater instead? And he did. He pulled us up in a little shallow bay. We were fishing A-rigs on more bluff, but he pulled us up in a little shallow kind of mud bottom bay with no activity. It looked like the desert. It looked like the Dead Sea. I mean, there wasn't a shad flipping. There was nothing. And I caught 2 close to 7 pounds on topwater, and we caught 4 others. And most of them were between 4 and 5 pounds. There were really a lot of fish in that little pocket. So you're right. Listen to the guide. The guide knows the terrain unlike anyone else. But as you get more comfortable, there's nothing wrong with making a suggestion to say, hey, what do you think about us trying that? It's vacation. Like you said, it's vacation. Enjoy it. And what's funny is when I was tying on that Sammy, Toledo didn't like it. He didn't. And we got to know each other well enough then that we were friends at that point. And he was just like, oh, no. And I told him, I said, Toledo, the Sammy makes Senor Brian mucho feliz. I said, mucho feliz. No fish, no problemo, but mucho feliz to throw my Sammy. And he laughed, and then I caught 2 big fish on it. Yeah. But you're right. It made me happy to throw that lure, even though he thought something else might be better. Just so happens I caught 2 fish. But Toledo is probably sitting there right now. Yeah, he caught 2 close to 7. He'd have caught 4 over 8 if he'd have thrown what I told him to. He's probably thinking that. So.
Oh, that's great. That's great. No, so... Okay, so we got through the fishing. Any color? What kind of worms? You said you were throwing worms. What color, size?
Hannah, I am not a huge color person. Like I say, I fished for a long time.
Yep.
I know people live and die by color, and especially when you're fishing 18 foot deep. If you've ever dropped a camera down 18 foot deep and tried to distinguish the difference between black with red fleck and black and blue, and it's just, I am not a huge color person. Our guide was a huge color person. Toledo, very specifically, I had black and blue worms. I had, the watermelon with red fleck. I had pumpkin, but he wanted a different worm, and so we actually went into the bait shop and bought 4 packages of worms that he had more confidence in. And you want your guide to have confidence, because you don't want him thinking, boy, it doesn't matter how hard I work, they're throwing the wrong thing. It's not going to make a difference. And so, I bought some extra worms when I was down there, but we had the most success on plastic worms just throwing pumpkin worms. We felt like that was the most successful. He really believed that black and blue would be better, and I didn't have the right kind of black and blue. He actually brought some from his house. That's how dedicated these guides are. Mm-hmm. He had a package at his house that he brought that he wanted me to try, and I caught a few on it, but even he admitted that I didn't seem to catch any more on a black power worm, 10-inch power worm black with a blue tail. That's what he wanted us to throw. We caught just as many, if not more, on a 10-inch pumpkin power worm.
Yeah, well, And I know, and they want you to have the best trip of your life. And it doesn't matter if you go once, 5 times, or us. And they know we work for the lot, and they want us to have a good time too.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, this will tell you how hard these guys work, and why it really made me even feel bad to ask, well, what should I tip? How much? I'm sitting here now wishing I would have tipped even more. I mean, I tipped greatly in excess, honestly, of what the lodge recommended. And now I'm sitting here, drinking a $10 Starbucks thinking, why did I tip even more than that? These people work so hard. We did not bring any A-rigs with us. I didn't want to throw one. It's just no fun to throw one. He brought 2 from home. We fished the afternoon with him. Then the next morning he had said, you don't have any A-rigs. He brought 2 from home. He wanted us to use them. That's how much he wanted us to catch a big fish, as he was bringing his own personal fishing tackle for us to use. These guides, I mean, they have no resources down there. The whole country of Mexico, most of the people don't have any resources. And here this guy is bringing me his own personal tackle. I could lose it. I could break it off. I could, whatever. But that's how much he wants us to be successful. It was really very heartwarming and very humbling, real honestly, to see the way these guides work and what they're willing to do.
Yeah, and I believe they would probably do this regardless of the owner, Billy Chapman, and his wife, Gail. What they quote unquote, the angler's in way. It's service, service, service. And every single one of their guides and staff member go above and beyond. I mean, did you see that when you first get off the van? Can you tell?
Yes, absolutely. Even at the airport, they got the sign there, and then there's people, they make sure everyone's carrying your bags for you, and they've got cold beverages in the van for the drive, and then you get to the lodge and you get up there. There's a tray of margaritas and nachos and everything for you there, and then the constant service with the food, and you can't your drink. Can't get half empty before they're already bringing you another one. And they very quickly figure out what you like. So they're going to make sure, you want another one of those. They remember what it is. I mean, I was so impressed with service. One of the things that I told people when I got back, with my job, I travel a lot. So, last year, I think I stayed 107 nights in hotels last year in 2023. And every single one of them could learn something from Anglers Inn. Oh. Every single one. The service is amazing. You can't get someone to make your bed in a hotel in the United States if you stay 4 days. They make your bed twice a day at Anglers Inn. In the morning you go fishing, you come back, they've made your bed, you eat lunch, you stretch out, take a little cat nap before the afternoon fishing. You come back after afternoon, they've been back in there and made your bed all over again. It's just, the service is amazing. And I tell you, the other thing that was very impressive with our guide on El Salto, Toledo, he has a long history with the company. I think his dad had worked for the senior Chapman, and now he's working for junior Chapman. He was very proud to be associated with what he called the company. He would always refer to the company. He was so proud to be part of it. He was proud of what the company did. He was proud of the way the company helps the local people with regards to tilapia stockings and other stockings to try and, help them earn a living and make sure that the bass fishing is complementary to the way they're earning a living, because a lot of them net tilapia and stuff like that. He was very, very proud. And that meant a lot to me as someone that employs people and, works for others that employ people. You don't see employees like that. So you're right. The Anglers Inn way is something you can talk about all you want, but until you go down there and experience it in person, you don't realize how impressive it is.
I mean, and it's almost, sometimes I'm like, I can open the door for myself. All of a sudden, you'll see somebody sliding to get the door for you. I'm like, it's the door, but it doesn't matter. No, it's just, that's just them. It's just them. Like, I want to pick up my plate and put it into the kitchen, and then they're like, it's gone. You're looking over to your left and your plate's gone.
And they're so happy when they do it, Hannah. That's the thing. You can't fake happiness. But, you can work hard. And obviously, they rely on tips. And so the great service should result in a great tip. But you can tell they're happy to do it. They're not just doing it for that reason. They genuinely enjoy making your stay amazing. They really do. They're just happy. And got a chance to talk to a lot of them about various things, because I don't take naps, and so I'd be sitting in there in the afternoons, and we'd talk and visit, and they were all so proud to be part of the company, and really took a lot of pride in how they served people, and they do. You're exactly right. The Anglers Inn way. That's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, it's terrific. All right, so lastly, everybody worries about going to Mexico and worries about their safety. I mean, we could go. You could go outside your home and get in the car, and boom. And you can't until you go down there. Everything is so smooth from the time you get off the plane. I've been there like close maybe 25 times. I have never felt unsafe, and maybe that's my naivety. But back me up. Did you?
Absolutely. And I do have something to compare it with, because for almost 10 years, I had a deer lease in Old Mexico. We used to cross at we take at Columbia, toll road north of Laredo, and we were past the second checkpoint into Mexico, and I hunted down there for almost 10 years with a group of bass fishermen, and I will tell you, on those hunts, there were times I felt uneasy. We're driving ourselves down there. So, you have a flat, you get pulled over, they go through your truck, they look at your stuff, all of those things. There were some times that I felt uneasy. I never felt unsafe, but I felt uneasy. This fishing trip was completely different than that. I never felt uneasy. Certainly never felt unsafe, but I was so much more comfortable on the fishing side of it than I had been previously when I hunted. And that's probably because, you fly into Mazatlan, you get in their van, and you're off to the lake. You're not winding through town. You're not, at a bar late at night. You're not doing the things that sometimes can get people in trouble. And they have control of everything, and they know it so well. They're so organized. They're respected down there that I just never, you just didn't even really think about the fact that you were in Mexico, other than it's very interesting, and you like looking out the window and seeing how people live and all the different things they're doing. But absolutely, I have done outdoors things in Mexico before where I did feel uneasy. And I was surprised. I mean, I kind of expected to have a little bit of that feeling of uneasiness like I had when I was hunting down there all those years, and I did not have it at all. And neither did my buddy from Montana. One of the big things that we talked about was, wow, this is really safe. So safe that, I'm now looking at taking my boys down there. I was like, this is great. I've got 2 sons. They're in college right now. I want to get them down here. And I have no hesitation at all of taking my family members down there, because it really is safe. And I know, people worry about it and they talk about it. In my experience, in all honesty, everyone that questions it and worries about it has never been down there. You have a lot of experts that read the newspapers and watch the news, and they know a whole lot about it. They've never been down there. I've been down there, before and now, and it is very safe. That's just not a concern at all for me.
Well, that's great. I mean, and the place has been in business since the early 80s.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
no problem.
No problem.
There's just no problem. And when you're down there, you see why. When you're down there, you see why there's no problems, because you're just in an isolated, rural area with a ton of great people, all of the locals, everyone that works for Anglers Inn, the other fishermen. You're just not in an area where you would expect to have trouble. You're just not. I can promise you, I would much rather be down there, than in some places in Austin, Texas. I feel a whole lot more safer on Lake El Salto. There's places in Austin, Texas where you don't feel safe, and I felt very, very safe.
That's terrific. That is terrific. Well, I'm so glad you had a good time. It sounds like you're coming back. Sounds like you're bringing more people back with you. But every time we have a new client, we like to meet them at some point and go fishing with them. So if it's not at Anglers Inn, which it could be, I would hope that maybe you would stick your toes maybe in salt water and come with us either to Guatemala or Panama, or even go with us to Alaska at some point.
Right. No, I can't wait to book more trips with Half Past First Cast. It just, everything is done, first class. And you guys do more than you say you'll do. It's hard enough to find anyone that will do what they say that they're going to do. You guys go so far above and beyond that. And I just can't stress that enough for people, that if you're looking to book as some sort of fishing adventure, I am so glad that I stumbled upon Half Past First Cast. I'm so glad you guys have posted all those articles, which people can use and learn from, whether they book with y'all or not. But I'm telling you, there's even more value if you book through you guys. And I'm a beneficiary of it, and I appreciate it. And we're going to go on a lot more trips together.
Oh, that makes me so happy. I love it. And I didn't ask you to say that. So, which makes it even better.
I wouldn't have said it. I might have thought it, but I thought, she asked me that. But it, I want other people to have as great a time, as we did. And I know that that's the way for them to do it. I'm telling you, there's no question that my trip would not have been successful. I bought the tackle box that you guys suggested to buy. The Bass Pro Shops, which one to buy and all that. I packed the way you talked about it. Put your reels in your carry-on so you don't lose those, but put all the hooks in the bags that you check. I'm fortunate I have high status on American, so I get to check 3 bags. So I was able to check all of those, but still take my reels and all those things. We'd be here all night if I went through all of the valuable information that you guys have on your website and you communicated to me personally for my trip. I'm a big believer in what you guys do, and I know that if others, will have a better trip if they involve you guys. I really believe that.
You're a great ringing endorsement. Thank you so much. And we will get you booked, and hopefully booked when we're going, so we can finally meet up.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate you guys.